Why do some people only feel powerful when they remind you of who you used to be? You've probably noticed it. No matter how much you've grown, how much you've changed, there are people who refuse to let your past stay buried. They bring it up casually, sometimes as a joke, sometimes as a reminder, but it always lands the same way. It pulls you backward. This isn't about memory, and it's rarely about concern. When someone keeps dragging up your past, what they're really doing is trying to control the story of who you are. And by doing that, they try to control how you see yourself in the present. Stoic philosophy teaches something most people never learn. Real power isn't loud, emotional, or reactive. Real power comes from clarity, the ability to see intentions clearly and respond without losing your dignity. In this video, you'll learn why people use your past as a weapon, what it reveals about their mindset, and how a Stoic responds in a way that quietly ends the game, without arguments, without explanations, and without giving away control. Stay with me. Once you see this clearly, you won't fall for it again. 1. They're trying to define you by your past. When someone keeps bringing up your past, they're not just recalling events. They're trying to define you. Human beings understand power intuitively. One of the easiest ways to hold power over someone is to decide who they are in the eyes of others and in their own mind. If they can freeze you in an old version of yourself, they don't have to deal with who you've become. That's why the past is so useful to them. Your past is fixed. It can't argue back. It can't defend itself. So when someone repeats your old mistakes, your old failures, or your old weaknesses, they're not speaking about history. They're making a statement in the present. This is who you really are. And if you accept that framing, even silently, you step into the role they've assigned you. Stoic philosophy sees this clearly. The Stoics understood that identity is not something you inherit from yesterday. It's something you demonstrate now, but people who feel threatened by your growth don't want to deal with the present version of you. They prefer the version they already know how to dominate. Notice how this often happens. They bring up your past at strategic moments. When you're confident, when you're setting boundaries, when you're doing better than before. It's rarely random. By reminding you of who you were, they're trying to shrink who you are. They're attempting to pull you back into a lower frame, one where they feel more secure, more superior, or more in control. From a Stoic perspective, this behavior reveals far more about them than it does about you. A person who respects growth doesn't need your past to feel powerful. A person who is secure doesn't need to define you at all. Only someone who feels unstable in the present needs to anchor others in the past. And here's the subtle danger most people miss. The real control doesn't come from what they say. It comes from how you respond internally. If you feel the urge to explain yourself, if you feel the urge to justify who you are now, if you feel the need to prove you've changed, they've already succeeded. Because now, instead of living in the present, you're defending a version of yourself that no longer exists. The Stoics warned against this trap. They understood that once you accept someone else's definition of you, you hand them authority over your state of mind. You become reactive. You become smaller. You start negotiating with shadows. A Stoic does the opposite. They don't argue with the past. They don't deny it. They don't decorate it with excuses. They simply refuse to live there. There's a quiet strength in recognizing this for what it is. Not an attack on your character, but an attempt to control the narrative. And narratives only work if you agree to participate. You're not required to answer for who you used to be. You are only responsible for how you act now. Once you understand that, something shifts. The words lose their sting. The reminders lose their weight. And the person trying to define you realizes, often without you saying a word, that their leverage is gone. Because the moment you stop letting your past speak for you, you take back the authority to define yourself. And that's where real control begins. 2. Guilt is a cheap form of control. Once they've anchored you to your past, the next move is predictable. They introduce guilt. Guilt is one of the easiest emotions to exploit because it feels moral. It disguises itself as responsibility, as reflection, as growth. But when used by the wrong person, guilt isn't about improvement. It's about obedience. When someone keeps reminding you of what you did wrong, they're often waiting for something very specific. An apology, a justification, a lowered posture, a sign that you still feel smaller than them. That reaction is the reward. Stoic philosophy draws a sharp line most people never learn to see. There is a difference between taking responsibility and carrying guilt. Responsibility is clean. It looks forward. It asks, "What do I do now?" Guilt is sticky. It pulls you backward. It asks, "How long will you punish yourself?" People who use guilt as a control tactic don't want resolution. They want leverage. As long as you feel guilty, you remain emotionally negotiable. You hesitate. You over-explain. You tolerate behavior you normally wouldn't. Notice how guilt is often activated. They bring up your past right when you set a boundary. You say no. You stop being available. You stop playing your old role. Suddenly, your past is used as a reminder of why you shouldn't be so confident now, why you should be more understanding, more patient, more forgiving, usually at your own expense. From a Stoic point of view, this is manipulation disguised as morality. The Stoics understood that guilt has value only when it leads to correct action. Once it has taught its lesson, it has no further use. Carrying it longer doesn't make you virtuous. It makes you controllable. That's why Epictetus warned against outsourcing your inner judgment. When someone else decides how long you should feel bad, they've stepped into a position of authority over your mind. And here's the trap. When you try to explain yourself to escape guilt, you reinforce it. You say more than necessary. You revisit details that no longer matter. You reopen doors that should stay closed. In doing so, you signal that your past is still negotiable, still open for debate. And once something is up for debate, it can be used again and again. A Stoic response is different. A Stoic acknowledges the past without kneeling to it. They don't deny mistakes, but they don't relive them either. They understand that growth is proven by present behavior, not by endless self-accusation. Guilt loses its power the moment it stops shaping your actions. That's why a Stoic doesn't ask, "How do I convince them I've changed?" They ask, "Why am I still trying to be judged by people who live in the past?" When you stop feeding guilt with explanations and emotional reactions, something important happens. The dynamic shifts. The person trying to control you realizes that the old lever no longer works. Because guilt only functions when you keep pulling it yourself. And once you let it go, you make room for something far stronger: composure. In the next part, we'll look at a deeper reason behind this behavior. Why your growth itself can become threatening, and why some people would rather keep you tied to your past than face who you're becoming now. 3. Your growth makes them uncomfortable. There's a reason people return to your past when you start changing. Your growth disrupts the balance they were comfortable with. When you evolve, mentally, emotionally, or in how you carry yourself, the old dynamics stop working. Roles shift, expectations break, and for some people, that feels like a loss of control. They knew how to deal with the old you. They understood your doubts, your habits, your limits. But the present version of you doesn't fit neatly into their mental picture, so they reach for what does feel familiar. Your past becomes a reference point, a way to say, "Stay where I recognize you." Stoic philosophy teaches that growth is not just personal, it's relational. When you improve, the environment around you is forced to adapt. Some people rise with you, others resist. Those who resist often disguise their discomfort as concern. They'll say things like, "You've changed." You're not like you used to be. Remember how you were back then. On the surface, it sounds reflective. Underneath, it's a signal of unease, because your growth reminds them of something they'd rather not face, their own stagnation. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this indirectly when he reminded himself that people act from what seems good to them at the time. When someone can't or won't grow, they protect their self-image by anchoring others to the past. If you stay the same, they don't have to question themselves. By pulling you backward, they avoid looking inward. That's why your progress can provoke subtle resistance. Not open hostility, but small reminders, quiet references, little attempts to bring you back into alignment with who you used to be. From a Stoic perspective, this isn't personal, it's defensive. Your improvement removes the contrast they relied on. It challenges the unspoken hierarchy. And rather than rise to meet you, they try to reduce you. This is why arguing about your growth is pointless. You can list your achievements, you can explain your mindset, you can point to how far you've come, but none of that addresses the real issue. They're not confused about your change. They're uncomfortable with it. A Stoic understands this and responds accordingly, not with force, not with persuasion, but with consistency. They let their actions speak over time without seeking validation from those who feel threatened by change. There's a quiet maturity in accepting that not everyone will celebrate who you're becoming. Some people will only tolerate you when you remain familiar. And that's okay. You don't need permission to outgrow environments that no longer fit. You don't need approval from people who only feel safe when you stay small. The Stoics believed that character is revealed in motion, not in memory. If your present conduct is steady, disciplined, and aligned with your values, you owe no explanation for leaving your past behind. In the next part, we'll look at how this behavior escalates. How bringing up your past becomes a deliberate test of boundaries and what your response silently teaches others about how they're allowed to treat you. 4. It's a boundary test, not a conversation. At a certain point, bringing up your past stops being accidental. It becomes a test. When someone mentions your past, they're watching closely, not just listening to what you say, but observing how you react. Your tone, your posture, your need to explain, your willingness to tolerate discomfort. This isn't dialogue, it's measurement. They're asking a silent question. How much access do I still have? If you laugh it off, they learn you'll tolerate it. If you explain yourself, they learn you're still seeking approval. If you get emotional, they learn exactly where to press next time. Every reaction gives them data. Stoic philosophy places enormous importance on boundaries, even when they aren't spoken. The Stoics understood that people treat you according to what you allow, not what you say you deserve. That's why composure is such a powerful signal. When you don't react the way they expect, the dynamic shifts. When you don't rush to defend yourself, something uncomfortable happens for them. The tactic stops working. Many people think boundaries require confrontation. The Stoics knew better. A boundary doesn't always need words. Sometimes it's established through restraint, through silence, through refusing to be pulled into an emotional exchange that doesn't serve you. This is where most people fail. They mistake calm for weakness. They think silence looks like submission, so they overcompensate, explaining, justifying, rehashing the past. But in reality, the opposite is true. Silence, when chosen deliberately, communicates strength. It says, "This no longer has access to me." When someone brings up your past and you respond with grounded calm, not irritation, not defensiveness, you deny them the feedback they're looking for, and without feedback, control collapses. From a Stoic point of view, this is discipline in action. You're not suppressing emotion, you're choosing not to invest energy where it will be wasted. Over time, people learn from this. Those who are testing your boundaries either adjust their behavior or drift away. In both cases, The outcome is the same. Your inner space becomes quieter, cleaner, and more self-directed. The Stoics taught that you don't need to announce your limits. You enforce them through consistency, through showing again and again what you will and won't engage with. And here's the key insight. When someone keeps bringing up your past, they're not asking for understanding. They're asking for access. Your response teaches them whether that access still exists. In the next part, we'll examine what it means when the past is the only tool someone has left, and why that's often a sign that you've already moved beyond their reach. 5. The past is the only weapon they have left. When someone repeatedly returns to your past, it's often a sign of something simple and revealing. They have nothing else. They can't control your present choices. They can't influence your direction. They can't shape who you're becoming. So they reach backward. The past becomes their last usable tool because it's the only place where you're no longer in motion. It's the only version of you that can't resist, can't evolve, can't contradict the narrative they want to hold on to. From a Stoic perspective, this is not a position of strength. It's a confession of weakness. People who are secure engage with what's happening now. They speak to the present. They respond to reality as it is. But people who feel powerless in the current moment often retreat into history, because history feels safe. It's familiar. It's fixed. That's why the past becomes a weapon. They use it to remind you of times when you were uncertain, times when you needed them, times when they felt superior or relevant in your life. By invoking those memories, they're not trying to inform you. They're trying to reclaim a feeling of influence, a feeling of advantage, a feeling they no longer have. The Stoics were keen observers of this pattern. They understood that those who cannot govern themselves seek to govern others, and when they fail to govern the present, they attempt to govern memory. But memory has limits. The moment you stop reacting, the weapon dulls. If someone brings up your past and it no longer changes your posture, your tone, or your self-image, they lose the only leverage they had. The reminder falls flat. The comment hangs in the air, unanswered, powerless. This is deeply uncomfortable for them, because it forces a realization they've been avoiding. The version of you they could influence no longer exists. And without that version, they have no role to play. Stoic philosophy teaches that you don't need to confront this directly. You don't need to expose their tactic or call it out. You simply need to live in the present with enough clarity that the past no longer responds on your behalf. Here's the quiet truth. If the past is all someone has against you, you've already moved ahead of them. They're fighting in a place you no longer live. And once you understand that, their attempts start to feel less threatening and more revealing. Not of your flaws, but of their inability to keep up. In the next part, we'll examine why trying to explain yourself in these moments often makes the situation worse, and how Stoicism teaches a far more effective response. 6. Why explaining yourself makes it worse. When someone brings up your past, the instinct to explain is almost automatic. You want to clarify, to correct the record, to show how much you've changed. But this is exactly where the trap closes. Explaining yourself feels reasonable, even mature. Yet in this context, it quietly shifts the balance of power. The moment you begin justifying who you are now, you accept their premise, that your past still requires an explanation. Stoic philosophy warns against this kind of mental concession. When you explain, you move the conversation onto their terms. You reopen events that no longer matter. You give attention to a narrative that should already be finished. And worst of all, you signal that your present self still needs approval from someone who lives in the past. This is why explanations rarely bring relief. They invite more questions, more reminders, more opportunities for the past to be dragged forward again. Because once you start defending, you've turned memory into a negotiation. The Stoics understood that not every question deserves an answer. Some questions are not meant to understand you. They're meant to test how much access they still have to your inner state. Notice the pattern. You explain once. They bring it up again. You explain again, more carefully. They store the details for later use. What looks like dialogue is actually data collection. From a Stoic perspective, dignity is preserved by restraint. You don't owe everyone a full account of your evolution. Growth is proven by consistency, not by speeches. There's a quiet authority in saying very little. Short responses, neutral tone, no emotional investment, or sometimes no response at all. This isn't avoidance, it's discernment. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to waste time arguing about what a good person is, but to be one. The same principle applies here. You don't prove change by narrating it. You prove it by living it. When you stop explaining, something shifts. The person across from you senses the closed door. The conversation loses momentum. The tactic loses fuel. And without fuel, control collapses. In the next and final part, we'll bring everything together. The Stoic response that quietly ends the game, reclaims your authority, and allows you to move forward without carrying anyone else's version of your past. 7. The Stoic response that quietly ends the game. Once you understand what's really happening, the question is no longer why they do it. The real question becomes, how do you respond without giving your power away? Stoicism offers a response most people overlook because it doesn't look dramatic. It doesn't involve confrontation, exposure, or emotional release. It works precisely because it refuses to play the game. The Stoic response begins with recognition. You see the behavior for what it is. Not a comment, not a memory, but a control tactic. And once you recognize it, you stop treating it like a conversation that needs to be solved. This is where clarity replaces reaction. A Stoic doesn't rush to correct the past. They don't defend their growth. They don't seek understanding from people who benefit from misunderstanding them. Instead, they respond in a way that closes the loop. Sometimes that response is a short sentence. That's no longer relevant. I've moved on from that. Sometimes it's a calm redirection to the present. And sometimes it's silence. Chosen, deliberate silence. This kind of silence isn't weakness, it's authority. It communicates something words cannot. This no longer has access to me. Stoic philosophy teaches that you control two things above all else: your judgments and your actions. You don't control how others remember you. You don't control which version of you they prefer, and you don't need to. When you stop engaging emotionally with the past, you force others to meet you in the present, or not meet you at all. That's the turning point. Some people will adjust their behavior when they realize the tactic no longer works. Others will drift away, uncomfortable without leverage. Both outcomes are acceptable. Both protect your inner stability. The Stoics never promised comfort. They promised freedom. Freedom from being pulled backward. Freedom from living under outdated definitions. Freedom from carrying identities that no longer belong to you. When someone brings up your past and you remain grounded, you reclaim authorship of your life. You show, without explaining, that your identity is not up for debate, and once that's clear, the game ends. Because control only works on those who still respond to it. There is another layer to the Stoic response that most people overlook: emotional economy. Every interaction costs energy. Every reaction is an investment. When someone brings up your past, they are quietly asking you to spend emotional currency on something that no longer produces value. The Stoic understands this and chooses carefully where their energy goes. You don't respond to everything simply because it's said. You don't engage just because someone provokes. That restraint is not passive, it's selective. Stoicism teaches that dignity is preserved not by winning arguments, but by refusing unnecessary ones. The moment you recognize that an interaction is designed to pull you backward, you step out of it internally, even if you remain physically present. This is what real composure looks like. Not stiffness, not coldness, but steadiness. When you remain steady, something subtle happens. The other person feels the absence of control. They sense that the emotional lever they relied on no longer moves anything inside you. And without that reaction, their behavior loses purpose. That's when the dynamic truly shifts. You may notice that after a while, the comments stop, the reminders fade, or the person distances themselves. None of this requires confrontation. None of it requires explanation. It happens naturally when there is no reward for crossing your boundaries. The Stoics believed that character reveals itself under pressure. Anyone can remain calm when things are easy. But when your past is used against you and you still remain grounded, you demonstrate something rare: inner independence. You show that your sense of self is no longer outsourced to other people's opinions, memories, or judgments. And that independence is quietly intimidating. Because once you are no longer emotionally reachable through the past, you become difficult to manipulate in any direction. You stop being predictable. You stop being manageable. You become self-directed. When someone keeps bringing up your past, it's not because they understand you. It's because they can't control who you are now. Stoic philosophy reminds us of something simple but powerful. You're not obligated to live inside old definitions. The past has no authority unless you keep answering to it. And the moment you stop doing that, its influence fades. You don't need to argue. You don't need to explain. You don't need to prove how much you've changed. Your present behavior already speaks louder than any memory ever could. Some people will struggle when they lose access to the version of you they once understood. That discomfort is not your responsibility. Growth always creates distance, and distance is sometimes the price of self-respect. The Stoics believed that true freedom begins when you stop being ruled by what no longer exists. When you live firmly in the present, the past becomes exactly what it should be: a teacher, not a weapon. Choose composure over reaction. Choose clarity over guilt. Choose who you are now, and when you do, control returns to where it belongs. With you,